Vitamin D is playing two roles in the story, and I want people to get both of them. One is for your own well-being and for the well-being of those that you care about. This is the cheapest, safest, most effective intervention, and there's no reason to expose yourself to more risk by remaining deficient when you could remedy that. But the other thing is, once you look into this, and if you have doubts, we will have links to your papers in the description. Take a look at these papers, follow them, look at the studies that say vitamin D has no effect, and look at the analysis of why those papers are flawed. See if you don't see the same picture. And if you do see the same picture, vitamin D is a highly effective remedy. The side effects of supplementing vitamin D are positive. The risk, if somehow the analysis is wrong, is minimal. If all of those things are true, and public health authorities across the world are failing to recommend this week after week, month after month, as they are disrupting civil liberties in order to control the virus through social manipulation in a way that isn't effective, if that's all true, then what else are they not doing right? And start to look at all of the things that you've been told are simply clear in the evidence. These things don't work, aren't an alternative, etc. And ask yourself, if they've got vitamin D wrong, how do I know that the things they're telling me on these other fronts are also not incorrect?
Good point. Very good point.
And why the double standards? Why is a new antiviral that's got one study behind it suddenly being approved by the FDA, and that's not, which is unprecedented. I mean, a single study is never evidence for anything, and yet 4 decades of evidence behind vitamin D is being rejected. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, why the double standard?
The only reason to explain that can be money. It's got to be being driven by profit.
Yep, I agree with you. The double standards across the board are the indicator that this is about something other than your health or public health.
Yeah. And why are governments still citing cases, which is a meaningless metric and has been since the beginning? You can't give enough context. It's not even cases. They measure positive tests, which is not the same. And the number of tests changes, but they never divide by the number of tests to tell you the fraction of positive tests that's happening. It's all scare tactics.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Linda, did you have one last thing you wanted to say?
No, that's okay. So,
all right. Well, I think we've arrived at the natural conclusion here. It's really a very stark story. I know people probably don't think vitamin D is a very exciting topic, but I think all three of us, and Heather as well, have had the experience of happening onto this story. And then once you begin to see just how central this is to the story that is now controlling our lives and has been for the last year and a half, it's almost impossible to look away.
Yeah. And I've heard that sentiment so many times. It's once people wake up and see the pattern, it's impossible to unsee it. You see it everywhere, and it suddenly explains everything. We obviously saw that back in March. So it's been a long, frustrating, maddening journey for us, but it's a pleasure to finally have more traction. And people, when we read Heather's blog post and the admission of your change of mind on vitamin D, it was a very exciting day for us, because we felt all the efforts of last year had sort of petered out. We did so much good work, and there's a community of hundreds of brilliant scientists working and doctors working on this. So we're very, very grateful that you're able to help us get the message out there.
The one other thing that I had wanted to say is that as your viewers look at the evidence for anything with COVID-19, they need to keep in mind that the majority of journals are funded by advertising, and the advertising is almost exclusively coming from big pharma, and that is going to influence the editorial policy. It just has to.
Oh, and fact checkers are also funded by pharma, as I've just read recently.
And even a journal that is open source journal, and most of its funding that comes from the authors is still, in order to stay in that community, continue to be Medline indexed, all those kinds of things. There's a cadre, and you have to be part of that culture to continue to have relevance. So there's a huge amount of pressure on editors to continue to draw within the lines.
Yeah, the number of ways through which the corruption affects what we come to understand as scientific information is many, and I think the lay public has not been served well by the insistence that the dictates of public health authorities are simply uninflected science. It's not the case, and it's time that, in the interest of our protecting ourselves from this disease and every other, that we ushered pharma out of the path of sense making so that we can begin to